I wish I had learned this truth many years ago. Be thankful for the days, good and bad.
All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior versus Zombie, and I'm excited to introduce another amazing warrior to you, Lynn Christensen, and I'll do that in just a second. But before we do, let's talk about about Warrior versus Zombie and what it is. So success is the journey, it's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are really all part of making us who we are up to this point, and they provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world. In each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life. Entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, investors, literally any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, they have unique value, and a vision that goes generations into the future, and Lynn Christensen is no exception. Lynn is an awesome warrior. She is Jersey-born, Texas-raised, a mom, an entrepreneur, a Christian, and an investor. Her 19-year warrior journey includes raising a son as a single mom, multiple jobs, hard work, sales, and now investing. Today, Lynn is a full-time investor and is crypto funded. Her passion is spreading awareness of the future and how jumping into the volatile waters of cryptocurrency may be a game changer for anyone that missed the .com, Apple, Google, or Amazon trains. And I guess I fall into that category. We can talk about that. Maybe we get into this. Her simple message is get education, focus, and apply your knowledge, which from what I've learned from Lynn already is something that she's practiced. So Lynn Christensen, welcome to Warrior versus Zombie. I'm excited to talk to you today. How's things on your side of the, what do I call it, the mid-rise, since we're living in the same neighborhood here. So how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me today. How are you?
It's exciting here. So we were talking a little bit before we got started and about the crypto market and a couple of other things. We'll probably get into that a little bit, but and there we've got the pup.
He came over as soon as it started. Sorry.
That's all right. You know, that's one of the things that happens. I've seen I've done podcasts with kids and dogs and you name it. So what's your pup's name?
His name is Buddy.
Buddy. Hey, Buddy.
Buddy 2.0.
Buddy
He's a
2.0.
hot mess right now, but he's still cute.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Okay. Well, so any particular excitement, challenges, anything that's in your world today that we ought to, that I think you were talking about the housing market and some other things and crypto, Bitcoin hitting all-time highs. And so
Yes. Yes. So
that seems to be
trading
what you're consumed with, right?
trading has been a challenge here lately. Definitely in the Forex market, the housing market, US 30, super volatile. We broke all-time highs yesterday. So this morning, as I was telling you, it was very challenging. But other than that, we made profits, made it out good. So
Yeah, that's the key. Is it's not about where it's at today, but whether you're making money or not. So, and we'll get into that a little bit in the third segment when we talk about where you are today and where you're going. But let's do this. Let's take a real quick break. We'll hear a little bit for the audio audience of Ricky Jean Wright, and it's not the getting there. And when we get back, I want to hear your story, and that's would be from where your 19-year journey, where you consider it to have started, and how you got to today. And then once we get to that point, we'll take another quick break, and we'll get into all of the things that are occupying your time and your mind today. So with that, let's take a quick break. Here, Ricky Jean Wright, and we'll be right back with Lynn Christensen and Warrior versus Zombie.
But the miles become the teacher while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time. wherever you go. It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see.
All right, we're back. I know for the video audience, one of the things I know that took you off because I realized I didn't tell you. So this is live, and so when we produce the audio podcast, I take a quick pause, and then when I produce the audio, I insert the music. So for those watching this, on YouTube, they're going, okay, where's the break? Where's the break? And I think
we were about to have a chat off the record.
I caught you with that. All right. So anyway, as I said before we took our quick break here, Lynn, tell me a little bit tell me your story. How did you get from where you started? I know enough of it to know that it's extremely interesting. And I know that as a warrior, you're always focused forward, as we discussed before. But I think it's inspiring to hear how you got to where you are today. So let's hear a little of that story.
Well, I got to where I'm at today because of COVID. Needless to say, but I'm a single mama, like you said, Jersey born, Texas raised. I've always been in sales. Sales is where it's at. I was a full-time waitress and a full-time student, and I didn't graduate college because it was go to school or not pay my bills, and I had bills to pay. And I had a friend who worked in the car dealership business, and he said, hey, go apply for this position. It was aftermarket managing at 5-Star Ford in Plano. Mm-hmm. I knew nothing about aftermarket. Didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I'm like, okay, I need a big girl job, right? So I go apply for this job, and I get hired right on the spot. First year, so it's my first job, actual salary plus commissions. It was $40,000 a year plus 25% commissions. My first year, I broke 6 figures. So then I knew the power of commissions, and I knew that I was destined for something other than salary, clocking in, working for somebody, making somebody else richer. Had no idea what to pursue, but I knew that I could make money as an entrepreneur in sales. So I thought, well, I went to college to be an anesthesiologist, so why don't I pursue medical sales? So I did. I started a medical sales business in 2014. So that lasted 7 years until COVID. A colleague that I worked with in the Ford business reached out to me during COVID. Actually, a year before COVID, I take it back. He reached out a year before COVID and was like, have you ever heard of the market Forex? And I'm like, no, but I'm interested. What do you got? You didn't reach out for no reason. So he's like, can you meet me at Starbucks? I meet him at Starbucks, and he shows me that this is a platform, or Forex is a $6.6 trillion a day business. So even if you make a piece of the crumb, you're still going to make money. And there was a way that you could get in and earn while you learn. So I did that. I like to gamble. And it was definitely kind of like gambling in the beginning before I had the skill set. Gambling was like a hobby of mine. Not anymore, because now I'm a daily Forex trader, so I get my fix. It's really funny. But anyway, so that happened in 2019. 2020 came, COVID came, and I'm like, okay, I've made a little bit of money in this Forex market from the platform that my colleague introduced to me. Now I need to know, how do I make a lot of money? So I started doing my due diligence, investing in like academies and universities to get my education. And then I started putting in more money, started trading on my own, blew my account a few times. And after blowing my account, I'm like, okay, I got to figure this out, right? We're in the middle of COVID. So I ate Forex, I slept Forex, I breathed Forex. Next thing you know, I'm introduced to crypto by the same colleague. He reaches out to me and he says, Lynn, I put $500 into this crypto thing and I've already made $1,500. And, he showed me his Cash App, this and that. Again, I like to gamble. So I'm like, okay, I'm in. And I put 500, flipped my 500 in this crypto platform. In 30 days, I made $45,000. So I'm like, we're on to something here.
Yeah.
And then from there, like the rest is history. I just started studying, researching, educating, finding mentors, attending. Even though we were in COVID, we still had like different conventions and, all that good stuff. So that's how I got here.
So
let me at the coffee shop downstairs, and here we are.
Yeah. Let me back up just a little bit. So we're kind of to where you are today, which is the main focus of your life, as you shared with me, which is investing and crypto and US 30 and the Forex stuff and so on. And we'll talk a little bit more about that after the break. One of the things I don't want to blow by, even though I know you may or may not want, is you've overcome quite a bit. I mean, you blew by the single mom. You've got a son, right, that's getting ready to graduate from high school. I mean, you don't look like you should have a son graduating from high school. So you started that journey. It sounds like you were kind of
16 and pregnant.
16 and pregnant. Okay, so you were still in high school, right? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I detect a very tenacious mindset, and it sounds like you did a lot of work and did what you needed to do. It wasn't necessarily that selling cars or aftermarket vehicles or whatever was inspiring to you at the moment. It basically was a way that you were just trying to get with your arms around what it was to make a living, to pay the bills, to support you and your son. Is that a fair assessment? Tell me a little bit about that, because I think a lot of warriors today have a vision.
Deep is what you're saying. You're trying to get deep.
Yeah, a little deeper, just a little deeper. We don't have to, but
well,
yeah.
I'll be honest with you. So I come from poverty, right? Mm-hmm. And growing up in that, I'm like, okay, I know I want different. I know there's more out there in this world. And it's funny because whenever I was a teenager, I used to like dream big. And my stepfather, he would laugh at me and tell me I'm living in the dream world. Right? Mm-hmm. Well, what's a dream? If you don't have the dreams, how do you attain your goals? Right? And throughout the years, I have achieved so much. And he passed away when I was 20. I've achieved so much. I've done so many things. I've seen so many things, traveled all over the world, and I'm living in the dream that he used to make fun of me.
Well, you're living, and that's one of the things that kind of inspired me to have you as a guest. And being a millennial, yet you've had a lot of life experiences. Sometimes the older we get, the challenges we have, we forget that it is nothing actually in the real world is ever created without somebody having a dream or a vision, if you will, for that to occur. The building that you're living in right now, the company or companies that you participate with, none of those really ever came into being without somebody envisioning the possibility of those things occurring. So yes, that's a lot of times, unfortunately, those of us that have maybe a little more history than you do will often say, okay, we've now limited our own dreams or our own visions based upon what we figured out how to do. You've had the good fortune in some respects, and I don't think it's just luck, but you've had the good fortune of experiencing different things and finding some things that reinvigorated or empowered your dream, allowed you to see beyond your current circumstance to something that inspired you. Is that fair to say?
So I don't call it good luck. I call it God's favor and hard work.
God's favorite. Well, I love that. We've talked enough to know that I am a Christian, and I do believe that everything that's truth and reality, including your dreams being possible, literally all things are possible, and you're proving that. I'm sure there's a lot more there. So one of the things I often ask my guests is if you looked at and the warrior versus zombie metaphor, as you heard in the introduction and as we talked about, we all have zombies. We all are infected by the zombie virus. We all have a tendency to kind of relive, the challenges we had before. When you look at over the last 19 years from, at least starting as a single mom, what would you say in retrospect? And again, I know we're not going to spend a lot of time there, but what would you say were the biggest zombies you've had to overcome in the last 19 years?
Well, I can't think of zombies, but what I can say is I'm breaking generational curses. I'm the first one in my family to graduate high school, the first one to go to college, the first one to move way to make way. Pretty much the first one to do everything. So I guess that would be like the zombie.
Well, you answered the question very well, because that is one of the things we have is if we focus outside ourselves, especially within our immediate circle, and we don't see, or we're surrounded by people that are what I would say in the zombie herd that are going in a certain direction, and that's all we can see. We can't see past that. Then that is a zombie. That is something that, a generational curse. You can call it whatever you like, but the reality of it is that that's a huge zombie that people have to overcome. Is the hey, nobody in my family's ever gone to college, and I went to college. Nobody in my family's ever had a 6-digit income, whatever it happens to be, as well as, unfortunately, if you've ever heard the analogy of the crabs in a bucket, the whole thing is that when one starts to climb out, the others pull them down because they don't want you to leave. They want you to stay in the community, and that can also be a zombie as well. The other thing is, again, you had people in that were zombies in your world that were saying, "Hey, your dreams, that's not reality. You're living in a dream world. This is reality." That again is also very, very common as warriors. We have to overcome. We have to be able to rise above. And I don't mean to be disparaging to those that we love and that we care about, but our dreams are our dreams. Our vision is our vision. Our purpose is God's purpose. That's what we have for our lives. So nobody else. We can't look to anybody else to live that. So yeah, that's a beautiful part of your story. So any other zombies? Any other things? The firsts. Any other things in your obviously, were you the first to get pregnant at 16?
No.
No.
I didn't
So
break
that
that.
part. So that part went along. Yeah, and again, that truly is and can be a limiter, a thing to overcome.
So I don't know about any other zombies. I think what was a battle throughout, being on my own as a single mom and being a warrior was being a single mama and being able to provide and do everything for my son, doing all the things.
Yeah.
That was a battle.
That is actually another big zombie, because competing demands, especially one as important as raising a son as a single mom and being successful in your work life for his benefit as well as obviously your own survival, can be a huge thing to juggle and can be very overwhelming. So the fact that you're here smiling, moving forward as a warrior and looking beyond the horizon, which is what I always say is where your vision is. That's a beautiful thing. Well, let's do this. Let's take another quick break, and we'll be right back, and we'll hear about where you are today, and if anything were possible, what kind of impact would you like to have? So for the listening audience, we're going to hear another little bit of Ricky Jean Wright, and It's Not the Getting There, and we'll be right back with Lynn Christensen and Warrior versus Zombie.
It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. Funny how wisdom and youth are always two different games.
All right, we're back, and I didn't surprise you with that one, so that's good. So now we're talking about trading and investing, and we're emerged, whether people want us to believe it or not, we've now to a place where we have to learn how to live with COVID as opposed to run away from it. So at least we're back into a world of normal American life, as I would say, even though the normal today is not going to be the normal prior to this, and it never will be. So tell me a little bit about where you are today, what you believe your life purpose is at this point, the unique value that you see yourself providing, and if anything were possible, what kind of impact would you have, Lynn?
So where I'm at today, I kind of already went over that in the beginning, but
a little bit,
yeah. My purpose, I feel now, is to guide my son in a way that I was never guided, teach him in a way I was never taught, mentor him, basically guide him in the right direction and avoid him having to do, no offense to anybody, but what the general population does. I want him to have financial freedom. I want him to, not have to deal what the masses have to deal with. I want him, the masses are going right, I want him to go left. And my purpose here is to serve him on that matter. And what was the other question?
So, and then the question, so in that life purpose, I would just say in your thing, what I heard, and so since you've given me a chance to make sure I understand what you said, is your world, which I can relate to very much, starts with your most immediate community, which is your son, and you want him to benefit, stand on your shoulders, if you will, benefit from what you've learned, and then take it from there and not be limited by the 95% of the people that are going in a different direction, because let's face it, the top 2% of the population really funds most everybody else, even when you talk about taxes and other things like that. So you want him to be in that top 2% and not doing what the other 98% does, that gets them to a place that may be normal or maybe common, let's put it that way, but it's not what you want to be his norm. And then also, I think from our conversation before, where you were going is that it's beyond your son. It's those people that God brings into your path. Is that not?
That's my other purpose, to teach him the true gospel, the true doctrine.
The true gospel and the true doctrine. Yeah, we talked about that. I think there's a couple of other potential episodes that we might do, or shows that, in terms of both that, getting to some of the things that you see there, as well as just this whole investing thing, which there's no way we'll have time to really educate. But tell me a little bit more about, so you're living that today. What kind of, aside from having your son following a path that maybe the majority of people don't get the opportunity to do, or haven't been provided, and other people, what kind of, do you see yourself impacting just him, and I don't mean just him in a negative standpoint, because obviously, if I believe if my 5 children all ended up in a better place than I was at the end of the day, that I would consider my life a success. I'm not suggesting that that isn't the case. But if there were anything, what kind of impact would you see yourself when we look back and you got to the end of your life and we said, Lynn Christensen, accomplished or had this kind of impact? What could you imagine there? What would that be?
That's a great question. Well, the impact I would like to have is just sharing the word of God, love. Aside from that, right now I am impacting others by being a master trader and making people money off of their money. And so by helping others in return, the universe will take care of me in that way. And hopefully I leave a good impact that way.
Yeah, well, I realize that's a difficult answer, especially somebody as a millennial. You've got a lot of life ahead of you. You've overcome and done a lot of things in your short years on the planet, and looking beyond. I love the fact that you are realizing that there's more to the world than just you, and that you are working and trying to pass on what you're learning to other folks. You also know you're very strong with your source, if you will, with God, and wanting people to understand what you believe you've learned and have that impact. And then getting to the end, knowing that you've brought a lot of people with you on that journey, because as I often say, the only thing that you can take into eternity is people. And so whether it's your family, your friends, the other stuff, even the money, is...
Impact with love. That's my answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good. Well, that's good. I know we've had conversations, so part of it is I'm reading between the lines, and part of it is I want to make sure that the audience understands the real power and depth of who you are, because making money is a means, right? It's it's a way. As there's a couple of things that you said that are truths. One is Zig Ziglar says you can get anything you want if you help enough people get what they want. And then, so that's the kind of invest in and let God take care of the return. The other thing is that, we have to love and care for and want to see other people at a better place. And it's only those that are living in fear or not in faith that struggle with breaking out of that 98% we were talking about, right? So let's do this. We're having a great conversation. It always goes way too fast. But what I want to do is I want to take another quick break. Talk about, we can talk about the investing and stuff. But when people listen to this podcast, they hear your story, they hear some of the things we've talked about what you're doing today with the investing, the US 30, the Forex, whatever. And you're wanting to do that. What would a couple, 3 things that you would want anybody to take away from listening to this podcast? And then we'll talk about how do we stay in touch with you after listening to this podcast. So with that, let's take another quick break. We'll be hear a little bit more of Ricky Jean Wright, and come back and hear the Land the Plane segment of Warrior versus Zombie with Lynn Christensen.
Funny how wisdom and youth are always 2 different games. The years flew by so fast is the common human complaint. The memories in our minds turn to diamonds in our soul, and by the grace of God on down.
All right, we are back, and this has really been an interesting conversation. And Lynn, thank you for Number one, being willing to share your story. I believe this is one of the, if not the first opportunities you've had to be on a podcast. And
Yeah, it's very private and less is more. So you made me open up more than I typically ever would.
well, no, that's totally fair. And some of the things, that's one of the hardest things I think we all have. And I think as warriors listening to this podcast, and I'll throw this one in, this is a freebie, is that being authentic, being who you are, wanting to take people on the journey with you requires sometimes that we step out of our comfort zone and share some things about our journey and about us that maybe we don't want to. Maybe they're not things that we typically do. But the interesting thing is, people look at somebody that's maybe striving or outside they're in that top 5% or 2%, and they think, oh, they never went through this. That's why they're there. They went through this. They never went through this because they're successful, right? Because it's easy to use that as an excuse. It's one of the hardest things when I've tried to inspire. I don't want to motivate anybody, but to inspire large groups of people. And one of the hardest things I've had to do is, because I was blessed at one point, I had a 7-digit income, live in a 7,500 square foot house, live that life, right? Once you've lived that life, people look at you and say, well, they're different. Yeah. They haven't gone through what I went through. I grew up poor too. I didn't have everything. So, but people tend to use that as their excuse. So I appreciate you getting more candid and being that. I know the warriors listening to this will be happy that you shared that. So anyway, so I'll give you a little bit of time to think about this question, but what would you want us to take away if we took away anything from this podcast?
Well, first of all, you're absolutely right about getting out of your comfort zone, because I preach to my son all the time. It's okay to be in uncomfortable situations because that's when you grow. And so what to take away from this podcast, whenever we were talking and you invited me on here, initially, I shared with you, I just want to help others be aware of what's out there. But I don't want to be like a motivational speaker, or sell anybody anything. I want it to be organic. So for those who are willing to want to learn and know that there is opportunity out there to make money, financial freedom, literally financial freedom right here on a silver platter. Okay. The clouds open up and God says, here you go, darling. I just want to be able to help anyone who is willing to learn and take their first steps to financial freedom. That's it. But organically.
So if I can put what you just said in the words that I understand, and again, one of the things we've heard over and over with warriors, and you said it in your way, it's really powerful. But it's interesting in the investing or financial space in general, and it's the same thing we're seeing now in the health space and other areas where if you really have the belief that God has things for you, that in really all things are possible. The only limitation to the possibilities are you. That with God all things are possible. Therefore, as somebody who is connected to source, if you don't want to call it God, that's okay. I mean, I'm not beating people over the head with that. But if you really believe in the truth of this universe and not the fear of the enemy, if you will, then you realize that all things are possible. And you wanting to remind people of that, put those possibilities out there and see them embrace that is a beautiful thing. It's very important for people to remember, because there's so many people. And I find it interesting because when I mentioned that I'm going to have a guest talking about crypto, my licensed financial people say, oh, you got to be careful with that crypto. There's all this risk and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Life is risk. Yeah. Living is risk. You
Can I
might
say something
die.
on that statement?
What's that?
Can I say something on that statement?
Absolutely.
Crypto is very, very risky and volatile, but that's why you make so much money. The higher the risk, the higher the reward.
Yeah, I learned that in business school. They taught me that in the MBA, in my MBA. You know, that's you're right. Actually, that's you didn't graduate from college, but you learned that. That's one of the things that you always learn is that the amount of return is always commensurate with the amount of risk that you take. But the problem is many people will listen to maybe a and I love the other thing I loved about what you said, the other takeaway is that it's not being motivated. You use the term organic. I use the term inspired. Inspiration comes from within. I never want to be, never have aspired to be a motivational speaker or a motivational podcast. I want this to be an inspirational podcast. That means that you hear the guest story, you hear what they are doing and their vision, and that inspires you to live your dream, your passion, your value. And you've said exactly that. You've said that in your own words, but really you're striving to show people, remind people of what's possible in their lives and what could achieve, and then allow them to organically, as you said, embrace that and experience it for themselves. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. So let me ask you this. How, Lynn, do we stay in touch with you? Because you're very private. You're not out there with millions of followers or whatever on any platform that I'm aware of. I
Social media.
We lived as neighbors for 4 years in the same place, and I didn't encounter you till a few weeks ago. So
Yeah,
I mean, you are very private, very. So how do we stay in touch?
that's a great question. Well, I guess you could go add me on Instagram at Lynn Christensen or on Facebook at Lynn Christensen. Um, Gary Vee says when you're on private, you're missing out on a lot. So I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. Well, one of the things we'll do, and I don't know if you got to register, but one of the things is this is live in the Hive, and the Be Connected audience will be here.
There you go.
It's a very intentional audience. So I'm going to get, if obviously with your participation here, but we're going to get you up on the Be Connected platform because it's spam free, troll free. It gives somebody like yourself that in those other broader platforms could be. It was founded by Tanya Hoffman, who was tired of being on all the broad platforms like a lot of women and being hit on and all this other nonsense. And you say, well, no such thing, but no, it gets expiring, it gets boring, it gets whatever. And so that's one of the things about this is we have a 5-star rating scale based upon the quality of the interaction, and we kind of self-regulate and things like that. So we'll get you up. You're going to find Lynn on the Be Connected platform. So if you're wanting to talk about crypto investing, US 30, it won't be very long after you've heard this episode that you can find Lynn Christensen. And in the meantime, look for her on Instagram and some of the other platforms that she's on. But realize that she is a very private person. I think that we're going to have another episode when the opportunity prevails to come back and just talk about maybe some of the nuances that you see in your journey with crypto, because it's a very popular topic right now with a lot of folks. So with that, if you've heard us on any
Buy
of
your Bitcoin.
buy
Your Bitcoin.
you're telling me not to sell my Bitcoin. Yeah, I think you
Okay.
told me that before. And again, I'm not a heavy investor, so one of the reasons, maybe a little selfish, is I'll learn something from Lynn that she can help me take forward into my own journey. And have your money make money. And it's not, as she said, which I probably should leave as a disclaimer, is all the crypto, blockchain, all that stuff is the future, but it is not without risk. And therefore, I would encourage you to go forward. And as she said, educate, focus, and really then apply your knowledge. So don't just jump in here because somebody said to, but realize that there are possibilities outside your comfort zone and risk that may be worth taking. So with that, let's land the plane for this episode of Warrior versus Zombie. And Lynn, thank you for sharing with the audience, breaking out of your privacy to share with a little bit of your story. And I'm looking forward to a continued participation of you in the Be Connected community, which is kind of like your crypto world. Even earlier than that, we're at a place where we can build something that will be part of the future. And I really believe
you're really going to challenge me, aren't you?
I really am. We're going to make this. But the cool thing is, and that's again the last thing I'll say about that, is it's within your control. And that's the thing, is you educate yourself, you do what you want to do, and you move forward with your own intention, which is what all warriors really do. So with that, let's hear the last segment of It's Not the Getting There with Ricky Jean Wright, and we'll be back next week, Thursday, 11 a.m. Central, for another episode of Warrior versus Zombie. And thank you again, Lynn.
Thank you.
It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there, when you get there you'll know. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there, when you get there you'll know.